Why you don't need many friends after 65. 5 reasons to embrace inner peace and live happier for seniors. Why you don't need many friends after 65. 5 reasons to embrace inner peace and live happier for seniors. Why you don't need many friends. After 65. Today we're going to explore 5 powerful reasons why having fewer friends after 65 could actually lead you to something far more valuable: true happiness and deep inner peace. If someone had told me this earlier, I might have saved myself years of stress, unnecessary social pressure, and emotional fatigue. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from, and stay till the end. We're going to explore 5 powerful reasons why having fewer friends after 65 could actually lead you to something far more valuable: true happiness and deep inner peace. Number 1. You no longer need to prove yourself to anyone. Imagine yourself 10 years from now, sitting quietly on a sunlit porch in the early morning. The air is cool, a cup of coffee rests in your hand, and the world feels unhurried. At that moment, no one is asking what you have achieved, no one is judging your choices, and no one is measuring your worth. The pressure to keep up appearances, to fit into social circles, or to prove your value has finally dissolved. What remains is a profound truth. After 65, life no longer requires proof. It requires presence, peace, and authenticity. Yet too many people carry into older age the heavy habit of proving themselves. They accept invitations they do not enjoy, maintain friendships that drain rather than nourish, or push their bodies to appear younger and stronger than they are. This relentless need to validate one's place in society creates unnecessary stress. According to the National Institute on Aging, chronic stress in older adults increases the risk of high blood pressure, heart disease, and cognitive decline. A 2019 study from Harvard Medical School confirmed that older adults who constantly sought external validation had significantly higher levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, which accelerates the biological markers of aging. The danger is clear. Living to impress others can shorten both the length and quality of life. Consider the story of Eleanor, a 70-year-old retired teacher in Massachusetts. For years after retirement, she kept up with every school reunion, every community event, and every holiday gathering. She said yes to everything because she feared people would forget her if she stepped back. But each event left her more tired than fulfilled. She began experiencing sleepless nights and rising blood pressure. When her doctor gently suggested that she slow down, she realized she had been living as if she still needed to prove her relevance. Eleanor then made a change. She began declining invitations that did not bring joy, and instead joined a local art class simply because she had always loved painting. Within months, her health improved, her anxiety faded, and she discovered a new sense of vitality. What gave her strength was not others' recognition, but her own acceptance. Science supports this transformation. The famous Harvard study of adult development, spanning more than 80 years, has shown that emotional well-being in later life is strongly associated with authenticity and self-acceptance rather than external approval. Those who let go of the urge to prove themselves reported higher life satisfaction and lower levels of depression. Older adults who embraced their own interests and priorities rather than chasing validation lived not only happier, but often longer lives. There is also an important dimension of safety. Many older adults overexert themselves socially or physically to appear capable, attending late-night events, skipping rest, or even ignoring medical advice. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reported that older adults who regularly overextended themselves socially had nearly a 30% higher risk of fatigue-related falls. The desire to prove capability can directly compromise health. By contrast, those who learned to listen to their bodies and prioritize self-care were less likely to suffer injuries and reported higher independence in daily living. The psychological framework of Erik Erikson, one of the leading developmental theorists, reminds us that the later years of life are not about identity formation through proof, but about integrity. Integrity means embracing the totality of one's journey with acceptance and gratitude. At 65, the question is no longer, am I good enough in the eyes of others, but am I at peace with myself? This is the developmental shift that healthy aging demands. The practical question is how to make this shift. The first action is self-awareness. Notice when a decision is motivated by fear of judgment rather than genuine interest. Ask, am I doing this because it fulfills me or because I feel I must? The second action is to replace external validation with personal fulfillment. Begin each day with a practice that affirms self-worth. This might be a 10-minute mindfulness meditation, which research from UCLA has shown reduces perceived stress by over 30% in older adults. Or it might be a daily walk, 30 minutes at a moderate pace, which the American Heart Association recommends as one of the most effective ways to protect cardiovascular health and mental clarity. Engage in activities that reflect personal joy rather than public recognition. Gardening, journaling, playing an instrument, or volunteering in a way that feels authentic are not acts of proving, but acts of living. They strengthen health, nourish the mind, and bring a sense of meaning independent of others' approval. The essential message is that letting go of the need to prove oneself is not withdrawal from life, but a deeper engagement with it. Freed from the weight of expectation, every decision becomes safer, healthier, and more fulfilling. The story of Eleanor, the findings of long-term research, and the wisdom of aging psychology all converge on this truth. After 65, life is not a performance. It is a practice of authenticity. The call to action is simple. Begin choosing from a place of inner peace rather than external pressure. When an invitation arrives, ask whether it brings joy or simply obligation. When considering how to spend the day, ask whether the choice will strengthen health or deplete it. Step back from proving and step into living. The reward is profound: a body that feels safer, a mind that feels calmer, and a heart that finally knows it has nothing left to prove. Number 2. Peace becomes more valuable than socializing. Come closer for a moment and imagine this invitation. It is not another crowded dinner party with overlapping conversations or a noisy holiday gathering where you struggle to keep up with endless small talk. It is an invitation to something far more nourishing, an evening of quiet, where the world slows down, the air is soft, and the only sound you hear is the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. At 65 and beyond, accepting this invitation to peace may be one of the most valuable decisions for both body and spirit. The tendency to keep saying yes to every social call is deeply ingrained. Many older adults fear that stepping away from busy calendars signals loneliness or disconnection. Yet research tells a different story. A study from the University of Chicago found that older adults who reduced unnecessary social commitments reported lower anxiety and greater emotional stability. Similarly, the National Sleep Foundation observed that people over 65 who scaled back on demanding social schedules slept an average of 45 minutes longer each night, giving their bodies the vital rest needed to heal and renew. Peace, in this light, is not absence. It is restoration. Consider the story of Thomas, a 72-year-old retired Navy officer in Florida. After leaving the service, he filled his schedule with veterans meetings, neighborhood clubs, and every family invitation that came his way. Though his days were packed, he often came home exhausted, irritable, and unable to sleep. One day, during a medical checkup, his physician pointed out that his blood pressure had climbed to unsafe levels. Thomas realized that his constant busyness was harming his health. He began to decline invitations that felt obligatory and chose instead to spend mornings fishing on a quiet lake nearby. The stillness became his therapy, and within months, his blood pressure improved and his nights grew restful again. The experience of Helen, a 76-year-old former librarian from Oregon, tells a similar story. For decades, Helen was the center of her book club and community groups. But as the meetings grew more repetitive, she found herself leaving drained rather than inspired. When she gently stepped back from her overbooked routine, she created space for something she had always longed for, learning watercolor painting. Each afternoon, she set up her easel by the window and painted in silence. The joy of solitude brought her not only peace, but also a renewed sense of purpose. Science affirms these personal transformations. The American Heart Association has reported that quiet reflection helps regulate heart rate, lowers cortisol levels, and improves oxygen flow to the brain. A study published in the Journal of Gerontology showed that older adults who devoted at least 2 hours daily to peaceful activities such as gardening, meditation, or journaling had a 30% lower risk of cognitive decline compared to those whose lives remained filled with constant social obligations. Stillness does not weaken the mind, it strengthens it. American culture has long prized busyness as a sign of worth, but history reminds us that solitude has always been fertile ground for insight. Thomas Jefferson often retreated to Monticello's gardens to reflect. Henry David Thoreau found clarity by the quiet shores of Walden Pond. Peace has shaped not only personal well-being, but also national thought. It is in quiet that wisdom grows. There are practical ways to weave peace into daily living. Start by reserving intentional moments of silence each day, perhaps 10 minutes in the morning to sit with tea before the day begins. Choose restorative activities that calm the mind and body, such as a gentle walk through the neighborhood or an hour tending to flowers. Redefine solitude not as isolation, but as a form of self-care. Saying no to a draining invitation is, in reality, saying yes to health and to longevity. A study conducted at UCLA found that older adults who practiced quiet reflection or mindfulness daily reported a 40% reduction in restlessness and significant improvements in memory recall. Peace is not passive, it actively heals. It calms the nervous system, allows the heart to beat more steadily, and restores the energy needed to enjoy the moments that truly matter. The message could not be clearer. After 65, peace becomes more valuable than the noise of constant socializing. Social connections have their place, but they should never come at the expense of health or inner contentment. The real invitation is this: choose calm instead of chaos, depth instead of distraction, and stillness instead of exhaustion. By accepting this invitation, life not only becomes quieter, it becomes fuller, richer, and more deeply alive. Number 3. Fewer friendships mean fewer disappointments. There is a striking contradiction that many people experience in later life. Throughout childhood and adulthood, society teaches that the more friends one has, the happier and more secure life will be. Yet for countless older adults, the reality is often the opposite. Large social circles can bring frequent disappointment, unmet expectations, and even emotional pain. After 65, the truth becomes clearer. Fewer friendships may actually lead to greater peace, stability, and fulfillment. The reason lies in the fragile nature of many human connections. Studies from Stanford University on social dynamics in aging populations reveal that older adults often report high levels of frustration when trying to maintain large groups of friends. As health issues, mobility changes, and shifting family priorities intervene, friendships that once seemed strong often fade. This fading does not mean failure, but it does highlight a universal truth. Not all friendships are designed to last forever. Holding on to too many at once often leads to stress rather than joy. Consider Robert, a 78-year-old from Minnesota who had always been the life of the party. He hosted barbecues, attended golf outings, and kept a contact list that stretched across several states. But in his later years, he noticed an unsettling pattern. When he called, many of those so-called friends were too busy to return the favor. Invitations went unacknowledged, and conversations often felt one-sided. Robert felt frustrated and unappreciated. Over time, he chose to stop chasing those relationships. Instead, He invested his time in a few meaningful connections: his granddaughter, a neighbor who shared his love of woodworking, and a fellow veteran from his local American Legion Hall. To his surprise, his sense of disappointment diminished, and his days felt lighter. He discovered that depth mattered more than breadth. This lesson is echoed by medical science. The Mayo Clinic reports that social stress in older adults, particularly the strain of maintaining unbalanced friendships, is linked to higher rates of depression and even impaired immune function. By contrast, smaller, high-quality social networks reduce stress and promote resilience. A 2020 study published in the Journals of Gerontology found that older adults who intentionally limited their friendships to just a handful of close, supportive relationships reported greater life satisfaction and better physical health than peers who spread their energy across dozens of shallow ties. Mary, a 70-year-old former nurse from Colorado, illustrates this beautifully. For decades, Mary felt obligated to keep in touch with every colleague she had ever worked with. Her phone was filled with names she barely recognized, yet she felt guilty whenever she failed to respond. The weight of these obligations left her drained. Eventually, she decided to narrow her circle. She focused on 2 lifelong friends and her sister. She spent less time scrolling through social media and more time walking in the park with her neighbor. The change was profound. She reported feeling calmer, less anxious, and more present. By choosing fewer friendships, she found fewer disappointments and more genuine joy. This shift does not mean giving up on social life altogether. It means redefining what true connection looks like. In American culture, there is often an emphasis on networking, on knowing as many people as possible. But in later years, authenticity matters more than numbers. Genuine friendship is not measured by how many names fill an address book, but by how many voices bring comfort when truly needed. Practical steps can help older adults move toward this healthier balance. First, reflect on which friendships feel reciprocal and supportive. Notice which connections leave you uplifted and which leave you drained. Second, give yourself permission to let go of relationships that no longer align with your values or health. This is not abandonment. It is self-preservation. Third, invest in quality time with the people who matter most, whether through shared hobbies, family meals, or heartfelt conversations. From a psychological standpoint, this approach is protective. Research from the University of Michigan shows that unmet social expectations are among the leading causes of loneliness and sadness in older adults. By narrowing the circle to reliable and supportive connections, individuals reduce the chances of disappointment while strengthening their emotional safety net. The larger message is this: after 65, fewer friendships can bring greater peace. The cultural script that says more is always better does not apply here. The richness of life in later years lies not in how many people one can count as friends, but in how deeply one can trust and cherish the few who remain. By letting go of excess, one makes space for authenticity. By choosing quality, one reduces disappointment. By focusing on depth, one gains stability and fulfillment. The invitation is to see friendship not as a race for numbers, but as a source of nourishment. When chosen wisely and kept small, friendships become lighter to carry, easier to enjoy, and more powerful in their ability to bring comfort. The reward of this wisdom is profound: less frustration, more peace, and a deeper sense of connection to the people who truly matter. Number 4. Your time becomes more precious. On a quiet Sunday morning in Arizona, James, a man of 80, sat at his kitchen table staring at a calendar crowded with penciled-in appointments. Doctor visits, church events, lunches with old acquaintances, committee meetings. It seemed as if every square was filled. He sighed and said softly, "How did I end up with less free time in retirement than when I was working?" That moment of reflection became a turning point. James realized that while his days were busy, they were not fulfilling. What he longed for was not another obligation, but the freedom to spend his hours on what truly mattered. This realization is one that many discover after 65. Time, once taken for granted, now feels like a rare treasure. With each passing year, the awareness grows sharper that days are not infinite. Research from the Stanford Center on Longevity highlights that older adults who view time as a precious resource report significantly higher levels of life satisfaction. They prioritize activities that bring meaning rather than those driven by obligation, and as a result, experience greater emotional well-being. Science underscores this wisdom. A 2018 study published in Psychological Science found that older adults who deliberately chose how to spend their time, focusing on purposeful, enjoyable activities, had lower stress levels and better memory retention compared to peers who allowed their schedules to be dictated by others. In other words, selective use of time is not only emotionally rewarding, but also cognitively protective. The danger lies in overcommitment. Many older adults, eager to remain socially connected, continue to say yes to every request. Yet this constant busyness can become harmful. The American Geriatric Society warns that overextension leads to fatigue, weakened immunity, and even higher risk of falls due to exhaustion. In contrast, prioritizing rest and meaningful engagement protects both physical safety and mental clarity. Time is not simply something to fill, it is something to guard carefully. Real stories bring this truth to life. Patricia, a 69-year-old grandmother from Texas, once juggled endless commitments to church groups and neighborhood clubs. Though she loved helping, she felt constantly drained. After a mild heart episode, her cardiologist urged her to reconsider her schedule. She scaled back, choosing instead to spend mornings reading to her grandchildren and afternoons tending to her beloved rose garden. She described the change as reclaiming her life. Not only did her health stabilize, but she felt happier than she had in years because her time finally reflected her true priorities. There is also a cultural angle. In American society, people are often judged by productivity, even into older age. The idea that being busy is equivalent to being valuable is deeply ingrained, yet the later chapters of life invite a different standard. Not how much one does, but how much meaning one finds in each moment. This requires courage, the courage to say no, to decline what does not bring joy, and to design a life based on authenticity rather than expectation. Practical steps can help put this into practice. Begin by keeping a simple journal of daily activities. Reflect on which moments bring energy and which deplete it. Next, choose one activity each week to let go of if it does not serve health or happiness. Replace it with something personally enriching, perhaps a walk in the park, a phone call with a loved one, or an afternoon exploring a hobby. The act of reclaiming even a small piece of time can create a ripple effect, restoring energy and deepening fulfillment. Medical experts also recommend scheduling restorative practices just as deliberately as appointments. Set aside 30 minutes daily for physical activity, such as walking or light stretching, which improves cardiovascular health and reduces the risk of chronic disease. Dedicate time to mental exercise, like reading or learning a new skill, which supports brain function. Protect time for rest, ensuring 7 to 8 hours of sleep each night. These are not luxuries but necessities, and prioritizing them ensures that time is not wasted on recovery from preventable health issues. Ultimately, the lesson is clear. After 65, time is not just hours on a clock, but a currency of life. Unlike in earlier years, it cannot be replenished. Every choice carries weight. Filling the calendar may once have been a sign of importance, but now the true measure of a day is whether it brings peace, meaning, and connection. By using time wisely, each moment becomes a gift, each day a chance to live fully, and each year a chapter written with intention. The call is simple. Guard time as the most precious resource. Say no to what depletes, yes to what restores, and choose with care. Like James at his kitchen table, every older adult has the chance to pause, reflect, and rewrite the schedule of life. In doing so, time transforms from a burden to carry into a treasure to cherish. Number 5. The most important companionship comes from within. There is no relationship more important in life than the one a person has with themselves. By the time 65 arrives, this truth becomes undeniable. Families may live far away, friends may come and go, but the companionship of one's own mind and spirit is constant. It is with you in the quiet of the morning, in the long stretch of afternoon, and in the final thoughts before sleep. The strength of this inner companionship can determine whether later years are marked by loneliness or by peace, whether they feel like decline or like renewal. Modern science has begun to validate what philosophy has long suggested. Being comfortable in one's own company is essential for both mental and physical health. A study from the University of Michigan found that older adults who reported high levels of self-acceptance and comfort with solitude had 40% lower rates of depression than those who relied heavily on social validation. These individuals also showed stronger resilience when facing health challenges, recovering more quickly from illness and reporting greater overall satisfaction with life. What protects them is not a crowded social calendar, but the ability to draw contentment from within. Consider the story of Evelyn, a 75-year-old retired nurse from North Carolina. After her husband passed away, she feared that solitude would become unbearable. At first, she tried to fill the void with constant social activities, but the more she pushed herself, the emptier she felt. One evening, she decided to spend time differently. She pulled out the piano she had not touched in years and began to play for herself. What started as a single night of music became a daily ritual. Evelyn discovered that she did not need a room full of people to feel alive. She needed only to nurture her own spirit. Her children later remarked that she seemed calmer and more radiant than before, proof that true companionship was already with her. The psychological framework supports her experience. Erik Erikson, in his theory of human development, explained that the later stages of life are defined by the search for integrity. Integrity means accepting one's own story, with all its triumphs and struggles, and finding peace in the wholeness of that journey. When older adults embrace themselves fully, they free themselves from fear of loneliness. Solitude becomes a place of reflection, gratitude, and creativity rather than emptiness. Medical research adds another dimension. The National Institute on Aging has shown that older adults who engage in self-reflective practices such as journaling, meditation, or even mindful walking experience lower blood pressure and improved immune function. The body responds positively when the mind is settled and at peace with itself. In fact, a 2020 study revealed that older adults who cultivated inner companionship through mindfulness and hobbies reduced their risk of cognitive decline by nearly 30% compared to peers who depended solely on social activity for stimulation. There are countless ways to strengthen this inner relationship. Creative pursuits such as painting, writing, or gardening allow expression of thoughts and feelings that may not be easily shared with others. Physical practices such as yoga or Tai Chi, adapted for older adults, help build harmony between body and mind. Even something as simple as preparing a favorite meal with care, savoring each step, can become an act of self-nourishment. These activities affirm that companionship does not always come from outside. It grows in the quiet dialogue with oneself. Cultural history offers powerful reminders as well. Ralph Waldo Emerson once wrote that, "The greatest thing in the world is to know how to belong to oneself." Great thinkers, poets, and leaders of America found strength in solitude, not because they rejected society, but because they understood the value of inner connection. The same is true for every older adult today. Building companionship with oneself does not mean withdrawing from the world. It means standing strong within it, no longer shaken by absence, but supported by presence. Practical action can begin simply. Dedicate 15 minutes daily to an activity that brings joy without dependence on anyone else. Write a reflection about the day, tend to plants, or listen to music that stirs the heart. Practice mindfulness breathing for a few minutes each morning to set a tone of calm. As confidence grows, expand this practice into larger projects, such as learning a new language, recording a personal memoir, or exploring photography. These choices cultivate self-trust and self-respect, making solitude a companion instead of a threat. The lesson is clear. After 65, the most important companionship is not measured by who sits at the table, but by the peace within your own mind. By valuing this inner relationship, health improves, resilience strengthens, and life feels richer. Loneliness loses its grip because the heart discovers it is never truly alone. The call to action is gentle but urgent. Treat yourself as the most cherished companion. Speak kindly to yourself, invest in your well-being, and allow your presence to be enough. When that happens, solitude becomes not something to fear, but something to embrace, a source of wisdom and strength that no circumstance can take away. After 65, life isn't about how many people surround you. It's about how much peace you carry within. You don't need a crowd to feel fulfilled. What you truly need are just a few friends who understand you, who match your energy, who bring calm, not chaos, into your life. Because too many connections without depth can drain your spirit and cloud your peace of mind. But even without close friends, you're never truly alone. Your greatest companion is already within you, your heart, your thoughts, your soul. True happiness doesn't come from outside approval, but from self-acceptance and quiet joy. At this stage in life, the most powerful skill you can develop is the ability to sit with yourself in silence and feel whole. If this is your first time visiting our channel, or if you haven't subscribed yet, we warmly invite you to hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss out on more uplifting, meaningful content made just for you. And we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts, your experiences, or your reflections in the comments below. Every voice matters here, and yours is a gift to us. Thank you so much for watching. May you always stay strong, peaceful, and deeply joyful in this beautiful chapter of life.